I took the job because I thought it would be quiet. That's the part that still bothers me. Not the blood, not the reports, not even what I saw in those woods, but the reason I came here in the first place. After 13 years working violent crimes in Columbus, I wasn't sleeping anymore. Every case followed me home. Faces, voices, the kind of things you don't talk about because saying them out loud makes them feel permanent. When the position opened up in Ashford County, population barely over 4,000, it felt like an exit, a way to finish my career somewhere calm, somewhere predictable. I told myself small towns didn't have monsters. I was wrong. My first 2 weeks were exactly what I expected. Noise complaints, a stolen truck that turned out to be a misunderstanding, a drunk guy who tried to fight a mailbox and lost. It was quiet in a way that felt almost artificial, like the town was holding its breath. People were polite, but distant. They answered questions, but never volunteered information. At the time, I chalked it up to me being new. Outsider syndrome. Small towns take time to warm up. That's what I told myself. Then the first kid disappeared. Her name was Ellie Turner, 8 years old. Lived with her mother on the edge of town where the houses thin out and the woods start pressing in. According to the report, she'd been playing in the backyard around dusk. Her mom stepped inside for maybe 10 minutes to take something off the stove. When she came back out, Ellie was gone. No scream, no sign of a struggle, just gone. I remember standing in that backyard, looking at the tree line. It wasn't like normal woods. The trees were too dense, too tall, like they were crowding together on purpose. You couldn't see more than a few feet in before everything turned to shadow. There was a swing set off to the side, still moving slightly in the wind. Something about it felt wrong, like the world hadn't caught up to what had already happened. "Sheriff," Deputy Harris said, pointing toward the ground near the fence. "You'll want to see this." Footprints, small ones, barely visible in the dirt, but clear enough if you knew what to look for. They led straight from the swing set to a gap in the fence, then into the woods. "No drag marks," I said, crouching down. "No signs of a struggle." Harris nodded, but he didn't look relieved. If anything, he looked worse. "She just walked?" I asked. "That's what it looks like. Kids don't just walk into the woods at night. Not like that. Not calmly. Not without hesitation." I'd worked enough cases to know the difference between panic and intention. These prints were steady, deliberate. Like she was going somewhere she meant to go. We followed the tracks past the fence line. The ground was softer there, layered with leaves and damp soil, perfect for holding impressions. The prints continued for about 20 feet, then stopped. I don't mean they faded, I mean they stopped. Clean, abrupt, like someone had lifted her straight up off the ground. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at nothing, trying to force it to make sense. Animals leave signs. People leave signs. Even the best predators make mistakes. But this wasn't a mistake. It was an absence. "You ever seen anything like this?" I asked. Harris hesitated. "Not exactly." That answer bothered me more than if he'd said no. We called in volunteers, organized a search grid, brought in dogs from the next county over. Standard procedure. The kind of thing you rely on when you still believe the system works. We combed those woods until sunrise. Then we did it again the next day. And the day after that. Nothing. No clothing, no blood, no broken branches. It was like she'd never existed beyond that point. By day 3, the tone in town had shifted. People stopped making eye contact. Conversations got shorter. When I mentioned expanding the search deeper into the forest, I started getting resistance. Not openly. No one said no, but there were excuses. Scheduling conflicts, safety concerns. One of the volunteers actually told me, maybe it's better not to push too far in. Better for who? That night I went back to the Turner house alone. I told myself I was just double-checking the scene, but that wasn't the truth. Something about that place was pulling at me. The yard felt smaller in the dark. The trees felt closer. I stood at the fence, looking through the gap where Ellie had gone. For a second, I thought I saw movement. Not something clear, just a shift in the darkness, like the shadows were adjusting themselves. I stepped closer, hand resting on my sidearm. "Sheriff?" I turned. Ellie's mother was standing on the porch, wrapped in a blanket. "You think she's still out there?" she asked. There are things you're supposed to say in that moment. Reassurances, probabilities, hope, packaged in careful language. I didn't say any of that. "I don't know," I told her. It was the truth, and somehow that felt worse. Because deep down, standing there with those trees staring back at me, I had the distinct, unshakable feeling that whatever had taken her wasn't something I understood. And it wasn't done. The second kid disappeared 4 days later. His name was Caleb Rios. 9 years old, lived 3 streets over from the Turners. Same layout, same kind of backyard, same stretch of woods, pressing up against the property line, like it had been waiting there longer than the houses. By the time the call came in, I already knew what I was going to find. That didn't make it easier. If anything, it made it worse. I got there before the patrol units finished taping off the yard. Caleb's father was pacing in circles, running both hands through his hair, like he was trying to pull himself out of a nightmare. His mother sat on the porch steps, staring at the ground, completely still. I'd seen shock before. This was different. This looked like recognition. "Sheriff," one of the deputies called. "Back here." I didn't need him to finish the sentence. The footprints were there, smaller than Ellie's, but the same pattern. From the back door, across the yard, straight to the fence. Same gap too, like it had been used before. Worn just enough to make passing through easier. The prints didn't wander, didn't hesitate, just a straight, quiet path into the trees. "Anyone see anything?" I asked. The deputy shook his head. "Neighbor kid says Caleb was playing with a ball, then he just stopped. Stood there for a minute, like he was listening, then he walked off." Listening. That word landed wrong. I followed the prints myself this time, same as before, same soft earth, same visibility, same unnatural clarity. And then, just like Ellie's, they ended, 20 feet in, nothing after that. I stood up slowly, scanning the trees. The air felt heavier here, like the forest had its own atmosphere. No birds, no insects. Even the wind seemed to die, the deeper you looked. "Sheriff," Harris said quietly behind me. "We should head back, get the team organized." I didn't move. "You ever notice how quiet it is?" I asked. When he did, his voice was tight. "Yeah." We went back, but the silence followed. The search effort was bigger this time. 2 missing kids changes everything. State resources, more volunteers, more pressure. But the pattern didn't change. We searched harder, wider, deeper, and still found nothing. That's when the stories started. Not officially, not in reports, inside conversations, half sentences, the kind of things people say when they're not sure if they should be saying anything at all. It started with Mrs. Langford at the diner. "You're looking in the wrong place," she said, refilling my coffee without meeting my eyes. "Where should I be looking?" I asked. She hesitated, then forced a smile. "Just be careful near the woods, Sheriff. People get turned around out there." Turned around. I'd heard that phrasing before. Too careful. Too intentional. Later that afternoon, I stopped by the school. Figured I'd talk to some of the kids, see if anyone had noticed anything unusual. Kids see things adults miss. They just don't always know what matters. That's where I met Noah Briggs. 10 years old, quiet, observant. The kind of kid who watches more than he talks. "You're the sheriff, right?" he asked. "Yeah." He glanced toward the window. The woods were visible from the playground. "They don't like it when you look for them," he said. "Who?" "The ones in the trees." I crouched down a little, keeping my voice even. "What ones?" Noah shook his head. "I'm not supposed to say." "Who told you that?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, And there was something in his expression that didn't belong on a kid's face. They did. Before I could ask anything else, a teacher called him back inside. He went without another word. That conversation stuck with me longer than I'd like to admit. That night, I pulled the old case files. Every missing persons report going back 30 years. I wasn't expecting much. Maybe a few runaways, a couple of cold cases that never got solved. What I found instead made my stomach drop. It had happened before. Not often, not enough to draw attention, but consistently. Every few years a child would go missing near the woods. Same circumstances, same lack of evidence, same quiet endings. And every single case had been closed. No suspects, no conclusions, just filed away. I sat there flipping through pages until my eyes started to blur. Names, dates, photos, all of them different, but the pattern was identical, and no one had said a word. I went home sometime after midnight, but I didn't sleep. I kept seeing those footprints, the way they just stopped, the way the town seemed to bend around the subject like it didn't exist. Around 3 a.m., I gave up and went for a drive. The roads were empty, streetlights spaced too far apart, the kind of quiet that presses in on you. I don't remember deciding to head toward the forest, but that's where I ended up. I parked near one of the trail entrances, killed the engine, sat there for a minute, listening to nothing. Then, I heard it. A voice. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. Hello? A child's voice. I was out of the car before I realized I'd moved. Flashlight in one hand, the other resting on my weapon as I stepped past the trail marker and into the trees. Hello? I called back. This is the sheriff. Where are you? No response. I moved deeper, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the dark in narrow slices. The air felt colder with every step. Then I heard it again. Closer this time. Help me. I turned toward the sound, pushing through a line of trees that seemed too close together, like they'd grown that way on purpose. Stay where you are, I said. I'm coming to you. For a second, everything went completely silent. Then something moved. Not in front of me. I turned too fast, nearly slipping on the damp leaves under my boots. The flashlight beam jerked wildly across the trees, catching nothing but bark and shadow. But I knew I hadn't imagined it. Something had been there. Something close. Hello? I called again, louder this time. Caleb? Ellie? No answer. The silence that followed wasn't normal silence. It had weight to it, like the forest was listening back. I forced myself to slow down, to think. Charging blindly into the dark is how people get lost, or worse. I'd spent years telling others that. Now I had to follow my own advice. I took a breath and turned in a slow circle, scanning the ground, the trees, anything that might give me a direction. That's when I noticed the smell. Smoke. Not strong, not like an active fire. Faint, old, like something had burned here a long time ago and never fully went away. Help me, the voice whispered again. This time it was directly ahead. I moved toward it, more carefully now, every step deliberate. The trees began to thin slightly, opening into a small clearing I hadn't seen on any map. The ground here was darker, almost black, and the smell of smoke was stronger. And in the center of the clearing, I saw him, a boy, standing completely still. Caleb? I said. He didn't respond. I stepped closer, lowering the flashlight just enough to avoid blinding him. He looked about the right age, same height, same build, but something was off. Hey, I said, softer now. You're okay. I'm going to get you out of here. He tilted his head slightly, not confused, not scared, just curious. You shouldn't be here, he said. That stopped me. Where are your parents? I asked. He ignored the question. They don't like when people come looking. A cold feeling settled in my chest. Who doesn't? I asked. The boy smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. It stretched too far, too evenly, like it had been practiced in a mirror, without understanding why. The ones who stay, he said. I reached for my radio. "Dispatch, this is Sheriff Cole. I've located static." I tapped it, adjusted the channel. Nothing. When I looked back up, the boy was closer. I hadn't seen him move. "Caleb," I said firmly, "stop right there." He took another step. The temperature dropped so suddenly, it felt like walking into a freezer. My breath fogged in front of me. The edges of the clearing seemed darker now, the trees leaning inward, like they were closing ranks. "You can't take me," the boy said. "I already belong to them." My hand tightened on my weapon. Every instinct I had was screaming that something was wrong. Not just bad, wrong. "Where are the others?" I asked. His smile widened. "Everywhere." Something shifted in the trees behind him. This time, I didn't turn right away. I didn't want to see it. But I did. Slowly, carefully. And what I saw didn't fit. At first, it looked like a person standing between the trees. Tall. Too tall. The proportions were off, like someone had stretched a human shape beyond what it should be. Its arms hung low, almost brushing the ground. Its head tilted slightly, mirroring the boy's posture, and it was smiling. Even from that distance, I could see it. A pale, unnatural curve that didn't belong on anything alive. "Sheriff," the boy said quietly, "you should go." I didn't move. Neither did the thing behind him. For a moment, everything just held. Then the thing stepped forward. Not like a person walks. It didn't shift its weight or bend its knees. It just moved. Smooth, silent, like it was gliding through the space instead of crossing it. I drew my weapon. "Stop," I shouted. The sound felt small in that clearing, weak. The thing kept coming. I fired. Once, twice, 3 times. The shots echoed through the trees, loud enough to hurt. The recoil was familiar, grounding. But the bullets didn't do anything. They didn't hit. They didn't miss. They just didn't matter. The thing didn't flinch, didn't slow down. It just kept moving, that smile fixed in place, eyes locked on me. "Run," the boy said, and this time, I listened. I turned and bolted back the way I'd come, branches snapping against my arms, boots slipping on uneven ground. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel it behind me. Not chasing, not rushing, following, guiding, like it knew exactly where I was going. The trees blurred together as I pushed forward, lungs burning, heart hammering so hard it drowned out everything else. For a second, I thought I'd lost the path completely. Then I saw it, the trail marker. I broke through the tree line and stumbled onto the path, nearly collapsing as I hit open ground. The air felt different here, warmer, thinner. I turned. The forest stood still behind me. Nothing moved, nothing followed, but I knew better. I made it back to the car on instinct alone, hands shaking as I fumbled the keys into the ignition. The engine roared to life, louder than it should have been, like it was cutting through something that didn't want to let me go. I didn't stop driving until I hit the main road. Even then, I didn't slow down. By the time I got back to the station, the adrenaline had worn off, leaving something colder in its place. Something heavier. Understanding. Because whatever I had just seen wasn't new. The town knew. They had to. And if they knew, then the question wasn't what was in those woods. It was why no one had tried to stop it. Or worse, why they had, and failed. I didn't file a report that night. I sat at my desk until morning, staring at a blank screen, trying to translate what I'd seen into something that wouldn't get me removed from duty. There's a limit to what the system allows you to say before it decides you're the problem instead of whatever you're dealing with. Unidentified suspect only stretches so far. There isn't a box you can check for something that doesn't follow rules. Around sunrise, Deputy Harris walked in, took one look at me, and closed the door behind him. "You went out there," he said. "It wasn't a question." "Yeah," I admitted. He nodded slowly, like he'd just confirmed something he'd already known. "You saw it." Again, not a question. I didn't answer right away. Then, yeah. Harris exhaled through his nose and pulled out a chair across from me. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look confused. He looked tired. "How long?" I asked. He rubbed his hands together before answering. "Longer than I've been here. Longer than the last sheriff. Probably longer than anyone wants to admit." "And nobody thought to mention it?" I asked. He gave a short, humorless laugh. "What would you have done if they did? Not taken the job?" I didn't respond. "Exactly," he said. "People don't believe it until they see it. And by then, it's already part of the job." "That's not a job," I said. "That's a cover-up." He leaned forward slightly. "It's containment." I felt something snap at that word. "2 kids are missing," I said. "That's not containment. That's failure." Harris held my gaze. "You think you're the first person to say that?" Silence stretched between us. "What is it?" I asked. He shook his head. "Doesn't have a name anyone agrees on. Some call it a thing, some call it a presence. Doesn't matter. It's been here longer than the town, longer than the county line. People used to talk about it more, back when there weren't reports to file and protocols to follow. And now we manage it." I stood up so fast the chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Manage it?" I repeated. "By doing what? Letting it take kids every few years and pretending it's random?" His voice didn't rise. "By not making it worse." I stared at him. "Worse than this?" He hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. I grabbed my jacket. "Where are you going?" he asked. "To end it." That actually made him react. He stood up quickly. "You can't. Watch me." "Sheriff, I saw what it does," I cut in. "I saw one of them. That kid is still alive, Harris. Maybe not fully, but he's there. And if there's even a chance—" "There isn't," he said, sharper now. "You don't understand what you're walking into." "Then explain it." He didn't, because he couldn't, or wouldn't. Either way, I was done waiting. I drove straight back to the forest. Daylight didn't make it look any less wrong. If anything, it made the contrast worse. Bright sky above, but the trees still swallowed light, like it didn't belong there. I didn't bother with backup, didn't call it in. I just went. The same trail, the same path. My boots found the way without thinking, like part of me had already memorized it. The clearing was still there. So was the smell, but the boy was gone. I stepped into the center slowly, scanning the tree line. Nothing moved, no wind. "Come on," I said under my breath. "I know you're here." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the temperature dropped. Not as sudden as before, slower, controlled, intentional. "You came back," a voice said. "Not the boys. Deeper. Wrong." I turned. It was closer this time, standing just beyond the edge of the clearing, half hidden between 2 trees that looked like they'd grown around it instead of the other way around. That same smile. "Yeah," I said, forcing my voice steady. "I did. You shouldn't have. Probably not." I took a step forward. It didn't move. "Let them go," I said. The thing tilted its head slightly, like it was considering the request. "They are not yours to take," it said. "They're not yours either." That made it pause. Not long, but enough. "They come willingly," it said. "That's not how it works." "They hear," it continued, ignoring me. "They understand. Better than you." "That kid last night didn't understand anything," I said. "He was scared." "Fear is part of understanding." I tightened my grip. "Then maybe you should understand this." I pulled the flare from my belt and struck it. The reaction was immediate. The smile didn't disappear, but it changed, tightened. For the first time, it stepped back. So Harris had known something. Good. "That's your problem, isn't it?" The thing's head twitched slightly. I stepped forward again, raising the flare. "Let them go," I repeated. The forest seemed to shift around us, shadows stretching, pulling, like something underneath was moving. You will burn with them, it said. Maybe, I said, but not before I make sure you don't take anyone else. For a second, I thought it might rush me, ended right there. Instead, it did something worse. It smiled wider. Sheriff, it said softly, you think this ends with me? And then it was gone. Not running, not fading, just gone. The clearing snapped back to normal. Temperature rising, sound returning, birds distant, like they'd been waiting for permission. I stood there alone, flare still burning in my hand, heart pounding, because that wasn't a victory. That was a warning. I went back to the station and filed a report. Restricted access to all forest entry points, safety hazard, unstable ground, ongoing investigation. Barriers went up that same day. Signs followed. Most people didn't question it. The ones who did already knew. We haven't had another disappearance. Not yet. But sometimes, late at night, when everything's quiet again, I think about what it said. You think this ends with me? And I realized something I didn't want to before. This town wasn't built next to those woods. It was built around them.